Okay, this is what we've been waiting for. Second round in the Western Conference. We're in the semifinals, and we got a marquee matchup tonight. We got the LA Clippers and the Denver Nuggets. Who do you got winning the series? Listen, it's going to be a showdown, and it begins tonight. Game one. Listen, you got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, you got Doc Rivers, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell. The Clippers are loaded, man, but they're going up against a tough and a tested Denver Nuggets. Listen, after that 7-game series against the Utah Jazz, the Nuggets are ready, man. They got the Nikola Jokic, the Joker. They got Jamal Murray, who's been playing like a superstar out of his mind. They even got Michael Porter Jr., Paul Millsap. Gary Harris is back. Listen, this thing is going down tonight, man, so I'm not going to hold this up. On this episode here, I went ahead and joined the Daniel Artest podcast, as well as my man Art from the R&D vlog. We got together, did another podcast takeover. You're not going to want to miss this. Make sure you stick around to the end, because not only will we preview the series, we're going to also, each one of us, give our predictions for who's going to win this tough playoff matchup between the LA Clippers and the Denver Nuggets.
Are you
Welcome back to Journey of a Ballaholic, the best talk show for basketball addicts. I'm your host, General Hannibal X. Now, if you're new on this channel here, you're going to be getting my passionate and in-depth analysis on the hottest NBA and college basketball topics. Listen, I'm a ballaholic, absolutely addicted to basketball. And just like everybody, I have my own opinions. But if you like opinions that are backed by facts, go ahead and make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, but also be sure that you tap that bell notification so that you'll be updated whenever I drop new videos, which is every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, I know that this video is being dropped on a Thursday. I had to drop this video one day early because tonight, the Clippers and the Denver Nuggets are starting off game one. So let's go ahead and jump right into this podcast with me, Daniel Artest, as well as Art from the R&D vlog. Man, let's get it. Man, the Denver Nuggets and the LA Clippers. And that's the matchup I want to talk about now, because when you think about it, you really got a little contrast to styles here. Whereas the Clippers, they're not like the Houston Rockets or the Boston Celtics playing small ball as much as them, but they like to play small ball a lot when you head with Montrezl Harrell like that 5, who really is about 6'8", and then they go with the rest of those 4 perimeter players around him. Now we're going to see that matchup against the Denver Nuggets, who have, obviously, to me, arguably the best center, definitely top 2 centers in the game in Jokic, who should do what he did in Game 7. He should do that consistently throughout this playoffs series against the Clippers, because Gobert is the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. And at 7'1", 7'2", whatever he is, with his long 9-foot reach, there's nobody on the Clippers that should be able to guard Jokic like that. So the way that we saw him ball out in Game 7 is how I want to see him do in the series. So, Art, what do you think about this matchup between the Clippers and the Denver Nuggets? I know in the last podcast takeover we did, you were leaning toward Denver possibly being able to upset the Clippers. What's your thoughts on them now that you've seen them go through a full 7 games against Utah?
Still leaning towards Nuggets, man. I think Patrick Beverley not being healthy immediately, he's going to come back in the series, but I don't think he's going to play game 1. That's a huge loss for them considering how Murray's playing. Gary Harris came back. Gary Harris was missing a lot of shots, but Gary Harris' defense, y'all seen what he did defensively at the end, man. Gary Harris stepped up. I foresee Jeremy Grant having a big series. Michael Porter's going to continue to strive and get better. So they have a lot going for themselves, man. I don't really know how well Jokic is. I think the Clippers are going to scheme. Doc Rivers, an excellent coach. I don't think Jokic is going to have just a MVP caliber series like we would expect, because they don't have a power center, or they have a traditional center in Zubac, but he's not a defensive center. He's not a power center like I'm describing, right? So I can foresee Jokic having a lot of double teams in his lap. So it's really going to be on the Nuggets to shoot well, man. And they have a few shooters, of course. Murray, Murray can shoot. Grant's inconsistent. He had, I think, Game 5 or Game 6, Cuz was like 5 for 6 or something like that. So Jeremy Grant's 3-pointers improved. He only went 1 for 6 this last game. But I can see Jeremy Grant have a good shooting series. Gary Harris should find his stroke again. Monte Morris. So it's really going to be on those boys. If we hit those threes when they drop down into Jokic's lap, I still see the Nuggets pulling it out, especially with Patrick Beverley being out. Paul George emerged during that last series, but I think playoff P is something real, like playoff P in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, that's real. You ain't got to play him. You know what I mean? Because dude, I don't know if it's in his head or not, man, but dude he didn't show up until he played like 2 games in 6 games. He really showed up in 2 games to the 6 games, and he wasn't even playing against a strong defensive team. So playing against the Nuggets, who do have a bunch of long men who can rotate on them, we're going to see what that shows out to me. I'm running with Nuggets, though.
Good point. What you think, D?
That's interesting. Clippers and Nuggets. That's tough. That's tough to go with the Nuggets, man. Listen, I'm glad that you brought up Gary Harris, man. His defense turned the series around. Really big defensive play, really big game defensively. But I just think that the Clippers, it just all hinges on Paul George. You know what I mean? Like if Pandemic P, whatever y'all want to call him, pandemic pissed down his legs. I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? Like with Paul George, he has to step up. Like this is the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? And you're worried about what people saying on social media, and that bothers me. You're supposed to, people rise up to the occasion when they're hearing the naysayers and everything like that. And it's not really naysayers. You played bad. It was one point you was 13 for 62 from the field. You know what I mean? Until you had that one game when you came out, you had 35, and then you kind of went back, with the 15 and stuff like that. And then also on the defensive end, Luka was just destroying you, and Kawhi too as well, So he has to. It all falls on him, to be honest, because Kawhi is there. 5 games in a row of 30 points or better. Kawhi is there. So now they signed you for a reason. They gave you this big money. So now you got to show up when it matters, because you did this in Indiana. You had some great games, some great moments in Indiana, but you also had some great failures, some big failures too when it counted. So right now it's up to him. So you know what? I'm going to go with Denver too as well, but I'll put an asterisk on it. It's up to Paul George, because you can, if they're both clicking, they're a good team.
Yeah.
And I think that you can scheme and double team Jokic if you want, but that might be to your detriment, because that guy can see the floor. Go ahead.
Double point.
Go ahead. Finish support.
And then once Gary Harris get the rust off of him, and his shot falls, then I think that could be trouble, because they got shooters surrounding him, so that could be to your detriment, Hannibal.
Well, I definitely agree with that. I think you made a very good point, and I want to respond to what Art said about that, is that I do agree. Doc's going to scheme to double Jokic. I mean, he has to. You can't allow him. He's too skilled on that box and too big to play against Montrezl Harrell, who's going to play most of those minutes at the center position. Even though Zubac starts, we got to remember, Harrell's going to play most of those minutes at that 5. And so Jokic is just he's too big, he's too good. And like you said, when you do scheme, when you do bring that double team, he's an excellent passer, the best passing big man in the game. So I think in that situation, it's going to be on those shooters. And I think getting Gary Harris back, like you said, his offense was a little off, but that'll come as the series goes on. Jamal Murray. But the biggest one I'm looking forward to, the guy I think that if the Denver Nuggets are going to win the series, it's got to be Michael Porter Jr. He has to be that third guy, because the 2 stars, Murray and Jokic, to me are not as good as Paul George and Kawhi Leonard when Paul George is Paul George. And that's the thing that, like I said, so I agree with you as well. He is the X factor on the Clippers side, because we just don't know what Paul George is going to show up. Like Art said, 2 out of those 6 games, he showed up. But majority of those games, that wasn't the Paul George that you thought that they traded away. Well, how many 6 first-round picks, or Danilo Gallinari, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? They traded away a lot of pieces to get Paul George in there, and that's the performance you're going to get in your first playoff game or playoff series with them. So he's got to be better. But like you said, man, Patrick Beverley's not there, and that's a big factor with the energy, the defense, and intensity he brings to be able to guard somebody like Jamal Murray or even Gary Harris once he gets his footing in there. I mean, that's going to be tough losing him, and also having an inconsistent Paul George. So I definitely think it's going to be tough. See, any game is going to come down to the clutch. I'm going with the Clippers. If it's coming down to the clutch, because Kawhi Leonard is he's a Terminator. I mean, he's going to get to a spot, and there's really nobody on the Denver Nuggets that can guard him. Bottom line, I mean, they could put, Millsap, they could put Porter, they could put whoever they want out there on him. But even with Grant on him, who's probably going to be the best defender that you're going to put on Kawhi Leonard,
definitely
he can't guard him. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's if it comes down to those clutch moments, I favor the Clippers. But this Denver Nuggets team, they're a high-scoring team. Other than Game 7 of the first-round series, they're a high-scoring team. So Jamal Murray, I think, is going to get into his groove. Especially in that Game 1, Game 2, I think we're going to start seeing him have some of these 30 and 40-point games against the Clippers. And Jokic showed that if you have the patience when you're coming off that pick and roll, you can get into the teeth of the defense and you can find those shooters. But once again, it all comes down to, can those Denver Nugget role players hit those open shots? If they hit those shots, they win. If they don't, they lose. And Porter Jr., I think, is that one. He's that guy, but I think Mike Malone's got to play him. I think the last game he had like 10 and 9, but he only played like 17 minutes or something like that. You got to play him. He's to me, he's their third best player when he plays 20 plus minutes. But if you're gonna limit him based on, you know, for whatever rotation scheming, whatever, then it could cut down on their potential. So for me, I'm going Clippers in 7. But I'm not opposed to seeing Denver win this if Porter Jr. turns into the Porter Jr. that we saw in the bubble prior to the Porter Jr. that we saw in the first round of the playoffs. Well, there you have it. Daniel Artest picked the Denver Nuggets. Art from the R&D vlog, he also went with the Denver Nuggets. I decided I'm going with the Clippers, man, in a tough 7-game series. I think this is going to be an amazing series. But what do you think? Who are you rolling with, the Denver Nuggets or the LA Clippers? Go down to the comment section below and let me know. Listen, man, for me, I honestly believe the X factors for both teams. For the Clippers, it's going to be Lou Williams. He has to be that elite third option and be consistent. And for the Denver Nuggets, it's got to be Michael Porter Jr. They need him to step his game up. And if he does, the Denver Nuggets could have a chance. I'm going with the Clippers in 7. Who are you going with? Let me know in the comment section below. Listen, I appreciate you for taking a look at this video. If you missed my video where I broke down why the Clippers will win the championship in 2020, go ahead and click the box on the screen. If you haven't subscribed, make sure that you do so now. Make sure that you stay safe out in the streets, man, because they're still shooting people down like dogs. And remember, we still want justice for Breonna Taylor and Jacob Blake. Peace.